You can't make sense out of the Bible, I'm sorry, without recognizing those two things. You have the case of Pharaoh, you have the crucifixion, you have Joseph's brothers, you have all the mainstream.
Okay, so you have examples of where God does intervene to bring about a particular plan and purpose for his good redemptive end. And then the non sequitur is, therefore, God works in this way to bring about every single action, thought, crime, every single moral evil of all time. You see the non sequitur between that. So in the same way that God worked through the sinful actions and thoughts of Joseph's brothers, he also works through the sinful actions and thoughts of every single human being. More than that, he actually sovereignly and unchangeably decrees the sinful acts and thoughts of every single creature for all time. If you're going to come to the conclusion of EDD, based upon these example texts of God intervening to judicially harden or to blind somebody in their rebellion, again, that's like taking the analogy or the examples of the stings that police departments pull off and trying to say this is therefore must be the way they work, that the police officers work within every single crime that's ever happened. That's a non sequitur. Just because you can demonstrate that the cops pulled off this particular crime through a sting operation doesn't prove that cops brought about by the same means every single crime. Just like proof that you can prove that the scriptures were written by divine inspiration, therefore proves every book was written by divine inspiration. Obviously, Calvinists wouldn't say that, but if you believe the book you wrote is true, then don't you believe that God sovereignly and unchangeably brought about the writing of your book? Okay, if you believe your book is true, and you believe God sovereignly and unchangeably brought about all things, including the writing of your book, then how is your book any significantly or meaningfully different than the scriptures? Because both of them, by your estimation, are true, and both of them are brought about by God's sovereign decree. What makes the inspiration of scripture unique? What makes it divine? Except that what you're doing, in other words, by EDD, you're undermining the times which God does intervene to bring about his purpose and plan, like the inspiration of scripture, like the proclamation of his godness over the gods of Egypt in the story with Pharaoh, like his provision for Israel during the time of Joseph, like his provision through Christ in the redemption of Calvary. You're saying, oh, well, God does this every single moment, every single time, undermining the uniqueness of the divine intervention in those moments in history. This is why we're calling these things out. You've undermined the revelation of Scripture by trying to say God works this way in every single circumstance at all times. And we're just saying, okay, well, where does the verse say that? Where does it say at the conclusion of the Pharaoh story? Does it say, in the same way, every single time somebody rebels against the things of God, this is what God is accomplishing. This is what God's doing. Is there didactic text bringing that conclusion to us? Is there some link in the text where it says Lazarus was dead in the grave? So too, you all are also born, like Lazarus, spiritually dead in the grave, and only if he calls you, which he only does for certain pre-chosen individuals, and he effectually brings you out of the grave, in the same way Lazarus did, that narrative there, this is supposed to teach you the way soteriology works. If you have the chapter and verse for where it says that, then okay, that's a really good point. But you don't have the chapters and verses that say that. You're just eisegetically reading Calvinism into those narratives. And we're just calling you out on it. We're going to say, no, you don't have a biblical backing for drawing that link. You're just ad hoc drawing the link based upon the system you presuppose into the text.